There's no way. I gotta say, if Akasaka has managed to be anything throughout his career, it's unpredictable. Jumping from horror to romantic comedy to showbiz drama to now another rom-com manga, except everything's weird and wrong and bad and I'm confused and tired, and why does everything this man touch give me pain? This was supposed to be a short video. Love Agency is a lot, which we'll get to. But firstly, it is the new weekly manga by Akasaka, which follows the story of Mari Maria Winter Nanase, Jesus Christ, a half Swedish, half Japanese girl who on the surface seems perfect. Athletic, beautiful, and capable at everything, except as it turns out when it comes to talking to boys, which makes pursuing her shy, bookworm crush Seki a bit of a problem. One day, she stumbles into an ad for the titular love agency, which promises the ones who lack the guts to handle their love life for them. Thinking she had just solved her problem, she happily buys into it, and gets contracted with this little fox called Kong, who now pursues her crush for her, telling her everything she should do and say, ghostwriting her texts, doing copious amounts of background research on her crush so she already knows what they like and can pretend she likes it as well. Wait, hold on a sec. What she doesn't know is that the introverted crush Seki is actually a fake persona curated by his love agent Pon, and Seki's actually an outgoing and sorta delinquent looking guy who seems to want Mari only because he wants to have to fuck with her. This is not how you... This premise is asinine, unlikable, and unconvincing. Fake bitches are what these two are. Fake bitches. Their desire for the other person is shallow at best and downright dehumanizing at worst, and they pursue their plastic love not by improving themselves or getting to better know the other person, but by avoiding the problem, giving up their agency to a literal agency who does all that shit for them. Sometimes, shit that borders on sociopathic behavior. It implies that the protagonists are willing to mask themselves with lies and optimize themselves for their crush, even if it completely goes against their true selves, which is the opposite of a good thing in a romance story where you supposedly want to see the main leads, you know, get together. Also, the idea of the love agency is broken and stupid. Putting aside that the thought of quantifying love is kind of gross to me, how the first few chapters portray the agency was just really confusing. I think I'm supposed to think that the agency is competent because all the characters are super into it, and it works sometimes, but it often also doesn't work because these two, mostly Mari, suck absolute ass at talking to each other and is unaware of it, so shenanigans ensue. Now, if this was Kaguya-sama and it was these two tsunderes messing it up, it would be hilarious. But in this story, where protagonists pay exuberant amounts of money to get the top agents in a love agency to make their crush like each other, and not working all the time for comedic effect feels like you're slamming a circle into a square peg. Am I supposed to think this is a scam or something? What the fuck is out of everything you could say about Oshinoko, which is a lot, having a bad introduction probably won't be one of them. It's bizarre, sure, but conceptually striking and intriguing. Jumping from that to the broken conceit of love agency caught me off guard and left me no hint of what to expect in the future chapters. For the reasons I explained, I didn't really want to see the protagonists get together. I mean, either way, their relationship seems to be in a limbo for the funnies, and the love agency colleague subplot that gets introduced between the e-girl Fox and fat guy Tanuki is about as interesting as the new Drake album. This joke is way too old. I thought Akasaka back at his wheelhouse, the genre that made him famous in the first place, could turn out better than the total clusterfuck he's been writing, and it's honestly pretty disappointing that Love Agency seemed like another splash in the pan. And then it got good. And it scares the shit out of me. I don't know if this is me underestimating Akasaka after he just spent the last 2 years writing a series allergic to addressing any of its toxic themes in a meaningful way, but when he answered the question of is this relationship good for anyone involved with an obvious no, I was fucking blown away. Slowly but surely, Love Agency transformed from a story painfully unaware of its inherent contradictions to a story that seeks to actively address it, starting from the main characters, Seki and Mari. Mari Maria Winter Nanase started off as a horrific amalgamation of cliché tropes with no residue of humanity, and the story had to change that in order to make her compelling. But the way Mari's desperate traits coalesce into a cohesive character was surprisingly well done. In chapter 3, she first exhibits some signs of over-reliance, a strong hatred towards betrayal, and some unsettling things about always needing to follow up on the expectations of her parents. It would probably woo me more if Kaguya didn't do this exact same rich girl struggle pack like 4 years ago, and if the manga just left it there, I would probably be shitting on it in a 4-hour video essay. But fortunately, it develops past this point. When asked what she looks for in a man in chapter 7, she answers with someone who's loyal, honest, but not intimidating. Not much new here besides relaying more of her character to Seki, who we'll get to, but the one thing that stood out is the not intimidating part, which ties back to her reason for liking Seki in the first place, because he was unassuming and timid. Why does she have this preference? Another question is planted in the audience's mind. In chapter 8's conversation with Pon, Mari finally reveals her backstory, and everything comes together. Wait, didn't I say that in the previous video as well? While she was in elementary school, her parents divorced due to an affair. She chose to follow her mother, which eventually led her back to Japan. While Pon tries to comfort her by denouncing her father, Mari reveals that it was actually her mother who was responsible for the affair. The unfaithful one made her choose, and when the young Mari, in a state of emotional disarray, chose her mother, she would never forget the look on her father's face. Her father later unexpectedly died. When I first saw Mari's hatred for betrayal and aversion towards men, I thought of all the generic things. She has abandonment issues and a bad man in her life, blah blah blah. But this reveal subtly exceeded my expectations. Her mother, for one, actually feels remorse. She warns Mari of unserious, strange men that could trick her into making mistakes like her mother, which is how she got the fear of intimidating men drilled into her. She takes her mother's desperate words to heart, but from the way Mari talked about her, it's clear she still harbors resentment towards her mother for betraying her family. But by siding with her, she now also saw herself as a traitor to her father. Mari has to both live with the fact that her mother's betrayal ripped her family apart, and that her own betrayal, in her mind, made her a hypocrite. She could not reckon with that, and blamed it on what she perceives as choice. The choice she made changed her life forever, yet she couldn't even tell Pon the reason she made it. That level of uncertainty is too hard to handle, and if choices can be this scary, she decided she would much prefer the absence of choice. I thought the reason she excelled at everything was because she grew up being pressured to do everything she's told, which is half true, but what I didn't expect is that instead of the pressure being something forced onto her, like we see so many times in rich girl stereotypes, she welcomed the expectations, because in her mind, it was just another way to alleviate choice from her life. It also explains why she was so willing to turn to the love agency, because she's already given up her agency long ago. She isn't hiring the agency out of malice or an immature attempt to thwart her problems, but out of genuine trauma. This event, her parents' divorce, is the core of Mari's character, and just look at how all of these personality traits that seemed random, like betrayal, fear of men, and the lack of agency, all tie into this in a multifaceted way, both enriching Mari's character and justifying the major issue I had with the premise. That is what a good backstory does. It's cleverly inserted into the story to tie up loose ends of a character to make them more compelling and the audience more invested. So it's sad that a lot of backstories I see these days require the audience to be already invested in some level, which is kind of doing it backwards, I think. But the important part here is, by the end of this, I have actually become invested in a character with Winter in her name, and genuinely wish her to be happier and walk out of this dark mental space. Which means I also know for sure, if she learns about Seki lying to her, which he did, she'd be more than devastated. So, how does the other side of this dynamic handle this problem? Seki is not the most interesting character individually, but compared to the Seki in the first few chapters, who admitted to only chasing after Mari for her body, which got no pushback, he has walked away quite a few of his toxic traits since then. I really wish some other character would do that. As the series points out, Seki's not that bad of a kid ultimately. He is respectful, caring, considerate, so considerate he and his friends would help a random girl on the street and spend a great day with her, and his extrovert tendencies makes him naturally adept at navigating social situations. By all means, he is a charismatic dude who would be most people's dream boyfriend, which makes it very funny when he has a crush on a fucked up girl like Mari. The dynamic here genuinely becomes pretty unique and fun. Yes, Pon trying to justify him lusting over Mari as him wanting to help without showing us any evidence of that was weak, let's say that. But on the flip side, he also, just like Mari, finally gets to addressing the main problem I had with the premise. After Mari told him how much she valued honesty and seriousness, Seki actually starts to realize how much of what he's doing is wrong. Those feelings bubble up again stronger in chapter 9, where he straight up admits that his fake persona working so well is starting to bother him, because it's tiring and probably not self-affirming to know that the only way you can talk to your crush is by faking everything about yourself. Both him and the audience by this point had the understanding that this relationship's issues run deeper than it first seemed, and something had to be done. And just about when we're the most invested in both of these characters, just about when Seki is deciding to do something about this doomed relationship, we get interrupted by the YouTube club, which starts holding Mari hostage and asking her increasingly explicit questions. Didn't I see this before? So Seki, in a fit of rage, puts a stop to this, revealing his true colors to Mari. Mari is very visibly distraught to see her crush acting like this. Seki realizes his grave mistake, and for the first time in the series, the lies these two told crumble and they're faced with their honest selves, their futures unknown. In 9 chapters, Love Agency went from having a shitty premise to breaking that premise down with what I would argue is some of Akasaka's most nuanced writing in a long time, far exceeding my expectations for the series. So after all of this, why did I still say that this manga terrifies me? Well, for that, we have to talk about, we're not avoiding this, I'm sorry guys, light spoilers for the Oshinoko manga for like 30 seconds. The main reason that Oshinoko, in my opinion, became less and less engaging was the contrast between how willing it was to throw in a massive twist that turns the whole story around, and how little it was willing to commit to that twist. Aqua finding out that his entire fucking purpose is a lie is treated like he spilled tea on his second favorite t-shirt. One of the first Chekhov's guns ever laid out in the series got fired, and nothing has happened for like 20 chapters. It's like Akasaka only thought of the wowzers twist and cool development, and nothing else after it. The series has other problems, sure, questionable morals, uninteresting characters, and a writing style that isn't bad, but just... You know that debate tactic called the Gish Gallop, where the goal is to overwhelm your opponent with the amount of arguments, regardless of their credibility, to create a false sense of authority? Yeah, like that. But among them, the fact that big things supposedly happen all the time but nothing much changes is still the most frustrating to me. It shows a writer utterly aimless with their story, conceptualizing it in fragments and montages, instead of a coherent narrative with pacing and progression. And I'm kinda scared this is exactly what's happening with Love Agency. Looking at the immediate aftermath of Chapter 9, you can see Akasaka realizing he pushed the status quo too far too early, and is now scrambling for pieces to keep the series going at a reasonable pace for a weekly manga. Mari was about to give up on Seki because, I mean, why would she continue? But we can't have that, or else Seki's gonna be completely excluded, and he's a main character. So let's have the fucking Fox chime in and go, what if we just put this on hold and try to find other guys who are also not definitively ending things with Seki, because that sounds very healthy and normal, leaving it nice and unresolved, and then let's have Pawn and Seki come to the conclusion that every romance has a chance and that they should keep pursuing Mari. No, but since I actually have no fucking idea how to keep going, let's introduce a bunch of side characters for Seki to waste time with. Let's further elaborate on the obvious side plot of Pawn actually liking the e-girl, which is just about as interesting as the new Slowdive album. Anime references, you like anime, right? Hypothetical young Jump reader? By the end, the status quo, despite going through a lot of turmoil, is roughly unchanged, just as intended. And it's not fun. Is there still hope that the series can get better? Yeah, definitely. The manga's like 4 months old. It could all change in the future, and I hope it does. But these patterns I've observed already spiraled one series down into a parody of itself, and the thought of it happening again doesn't inspire much faith in me. So why? What's the reason this pattern has haunted Akasaka's writing for so long? After suffering through Oshinoko, I thought maybe it's just incompetency, or maybe it's a cynical attempt to bait the audience at every opportunity. But after reading this new release, I want to give this author who I've been shitting on for a long time the benefit of the doubt. The first 9 chapters of Love Agency felt well thought out and subversive. It felt like the story Akasaka wanted to tell, one that started off as a benign concept, but eventually grows into a story, refreshingly, about a romance that shouldn't work out, and an examination of how trauma affects our perception. And just when it seemed to hit its climax, the series continued in the most milquetoast way possible. What followed felt like work, an obligation to keep the series running for the sake of keeping it running. And maybe Akasaka didn't write it that way because he ran out of ideas. We can see that he does often have good ideas. It's a weekly manga. No healthy weekly manga is gonna let him end it so soon. Combine that with a profession known for its pressure cooker environment, where you might not be able to have time to complete certain ideas, it makes sense that he would bloat it out with needless bullshit that makes the story worse. I don't know the guy personally, but in a weird way I feel bad for Akasaka. He has made his name creating weekly manga, but it's clear, to me at least, that what he wants to explore right now does not fit the serialized format, and I hope I have shown that throughout this video. He needs more time to really get an idea to his full potential, like we've seen here with this new series, and obviously that's totally fine. Not everybody can be or should be Eiichiro Oda. Since Fujimoto clearly knows about Akasaka, why doesn't he take a page out of his book and write a longer one-shot, or a short story where you can explore a certain concept and end it before it has the chance to get vapid? Imagine Love Agency, but without the stalling, and after the main characters revealed their true selves, the story resumes from there, instead of trailing off into a million different directions. I genuinely think an Akasaka one-shot, in the same vein as Goodbye Eri or Look Back, can embody the best parts of his writing, his unpredictability and subversiveness, while solving most of the problems that have plagued his stories for a while. Hell, I'm willing to bet, even though I fucking hate that thing more than anything, Oshinoko, if it was a one-shot, could have been a lot better. But maybe just like how not everybody can make One Piece, a story perfectly engineered for the Shonen Jump media machine, not everybody can be an auteur with a cult following like Fujimoto and get these opportunities. For Akasaka, and I'm sure many others, weekly manga might be the only way to get people's eyes on their stories. The magazine he publishes his work in, Young Jump, hasn't even had a monthly version since 2017, presumably because people now prefer cheap, approachable, and frequent entertainment. It just bums me out to see stories deprived of their full potential because they don't fit into this very rigid and stressful structure. To see that to some people at the top, giving artists the type of environment they need to make better art is less important than profit. And like fucking one of Akasaka's manga sold 22 million. He's honestly the best case scenario compared to the countless great artists that will go forever unnoticed because they don't make what the market desires. Love Agency terrifies me, because it shows Akasaka is still able to impress after Oshinoko with such a stupid premise in such a short amount of time. Love Agency terrifies me, because it possesses so much potential, but also the tendencies that could squander that very potential in the future. Love Agency terrifies me, because it shows the limitations of marketable art that forces creatives to conform and make worse products, or fade away. Capitalism bad.